So thank you for everybody who's made time for this on a Friday. I think this is going to be a very well spent half an hour, so hopefully you'll agree with me by the end of this. So I'd like to just crack straight on really and show you what we've got for you today. So we're going to talk about the pandemic and what happened to us and what can we do about it. And I was saying when my working title for this was WTF actually for a while. There's been COVID, which obviously then caused a pandemic with this repeating cycle of never-ending, frustrating lockdowns, which caused, isolation, reduced interaction, people buying in a completely different way. For those salespeople that were doing face-to-face meetings, they were gone. And even now, now we're over this horrible lockdown cycle, hopefully, we're still in this very low level really of normal people interaction again. And the challenges are that actually, as we go back to this normal people interaction again, stuff's changed. So, we've been in this hypervigilant state during the lockdown, and now we're kind of just starting to relax and let go a little bit. But our perception is that we've lost control of some things. Relationships that were good are now suddenly tense. People are taking offense where they didn't used to. People are getting frustrated really easily with each other. And performance is, a million miles from where it was. And salespeople hitting targets is probably at its lowest it's been certainly since I started looking at it. What we're going to look at today are two views on how we got here. So from Rick and Rain, who we were laughing earlier should have a breakfast show because they've both got the same initials and it sounds really good. Rick and Rain.
Early mornings with Rick and Rain.
Early mornings with Rick and Rain. I'm sure I'd feel better if I had Rick and Rain in the morning. So first up, we've got Rain, who's a neuroscientist specializing in performance through well-being. And she's going to tell us a bit about the pandemic brain research. Yes, it's a real thing, pandemic brain. We all say it, but actually it's real. And some brain hacks to help us deal with that. And then second up, we've got Rick Hayden, who's a business psychologist specializing in team and personal communication. And he's going to how our character preferences have changed and what we can do about that, including things like peer coaching. At the end, I'll mention again, there's an opportunity to explore your challenges one-to-one in a complimentary session with Rick and Rain. I've got a few of those sessions available still. So I'll be sending out communications to people after this event. If you would like to grab one of those slots early, do email me personally in the chat with your email address and I'll make sure you get one of those if there's enough left. So with no further ado, it's with great pleasure that I'm going to hand you over to Rain, first of all, to start with.
Hello and welcome to everybody. So anybody who knows me and has worked with me already will know that this is a real passion of mine, that really talking about how the brain affects us, about how it affects our behaviours and how it affects both our well-being and our performance and our ability to predict ongoing performance success in our life, personally and in business. There's a lot of research around the whole pandemic brain issue. We all know that we've been really affected, as Liz was saying, by everything that's happened with the pandemic. We've got these unprecedented levels of threat, uncertainty, stress and social isolation, and as pack animals we need to be together to support each other to grow and to really be feeling at our highest levels of well-being. So having our personal freedoms taken away from us has been really unsettling, and it's had real effects on the brain. What I'm going to be looking at is exactly what it says on the agenda there. So looking into what it is, why we're feeling the way we are, how it's actually physically affecting us and our behaviours and our performance, and what we can do about it. What I'd like you to remember and think about it, obviously you're going to be getting the handouts at the end of the session that we're going to be talking about, but also if you want to talk about your personal situation or your private or your business situation, we're going to give you the opportunity, as Liz says, to have a coaching session with us, deep dive into that and take away some more models from that as well. So what is pandemic brain? Let's have a look at it, Liz. So if you can just move forward, thanks.
Sorry, Elaine, my slide. Okay. There we go.
So I'm not going to go into a whole load of neuroscience. I could talk about this for all day, but just suffice it to say, it affects everybody. If you're in sales, it has a particular poor effect because all of the functions of sales and sales performance and capabilities and competencies are all related to brain functioning. But I was looking at the Harvard medical research that has come out looking at what's happened to our brains, whether if we haven't had COVID. And what's really interesting is that the brain structures have changed. All I want you to look at is the two brains at the top of the picture. And the one on the left is a normal functioning brain, and the one on the right is the brain after the lockdown and being affected by the pandemic. And all I want you to notice is that there is a lot more red in the right-hand one. That shows something called neuroinflammation or brain inflammation. And what's really interesting is if you have a look at the right-hand one and the right side of the right-hand one and the top of the right-hand one, you'll actually notice that there's much more red there. And that, if you've done any work with me, you'll know that's your neocortex. That's the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's right at the front, that takes on all your information, it gives you all your cognitive abilities. It enables you to make decisions, to process information really quickly, take on learning, learn from experiences, your memory centers. It allows you for your language and all sorts of other really important functions. What's also interesting is that the red sections also highlight the areas of mood. So mood disorders, mental health disorders, mental instability, so depression and low mood, frustration, ability to deal with your emotions and to manage them. So we're seeing a lot of uninhibited behaviours. As Liz said, we're seeing a lot of people who are so happy to be offended by everything. Have you noticed that? How many people have just noticed that some people are just so reactive and so hyper emotional about everything and anything that comes into their sphere of contact? It's a real issue. So we need to learn this inflammation is going on. It's real. It's happening. It's happening whether you haven't had COVID or whether you have had COVID. We're going to look at the stats in a second if you want to just move forward, so that we can really have a look at what this is actually doing to us. So on the left-hand side, you'll see impact from pandemic. That's whether you haven't had COVID. And we're experiencing really high levels of mood change, our physical and mental exhaustion, and difficulty just concentrating and focusing. But with COVID on top of that, and let's face it, the majority of the world at some point is going to get COVID. So your sales team, yourself, will actually, probably likely to get one of the variants at some point. And this then gives us what's this brain fog, this inability to use our cognitive processes. We're starting to forget things. We can't concentrate, we can't make the right decisions. Sometimes we can't even find the right words. And what's really scary about that is, I don't know about you, but I sort of thought I was having some kind of, early onset dementia or something was going on for me. And it is really, really quite scary. And it's showing in the brain that actually that's where it's coming from. So Cambridge did this assessment all about the effects of COVID and long COVID on individuals. And unfortunately, it shows that yes, it's having a direct effect on the brain, and yes, it's having a long-term effect on physical and mental capability and capacity. So what we want to know is what we can do about it. If your sales teams don't have the energy, they're having anxiety and depression. Not just your sales teams, but yourselves, leaders, and your prospects, your customers, your clients. We're all going through this. Over 86% of people are having some symptoms, and there's research to back that up as well. So we're all finding it difficult to communicate, we're all finding it difficult to manage our emotions, we're all finding it difficult to process information, come up with negotiation techniques and objection handling, all of those things that we need to do, solution creation, innovation, all of these things are being affected. So if you've worked with me, you'll know that I work with the mental toughness assessment, and this builds resilience. We need to build back our resilience. We need to build advanced mindset techniques, growth mindset. We need to build up our ability to stay positive, to push through challenge and change no matter what's going on, and stay focused. So these are the competencies of advanced mindset that actually we need to help ourselves, but also our teams with. So I'm just going to move on to some solutions. So there are so many different things that we can do, simple things you can do through coaching, support. We talk about mental health, but it's not really just about, you know, sort of mental health practitioners. It's about everyday mental health. It's about that instability of mental stability. How do we retain that? So I'm going to look at a couple of things from this session. One being, how do we develop our attention and our focus? So a lovely chap who you might have heard of, who just bought Twitter, is called Elon Musk. And I wonder if you know how he manages to run 8 different businesses all at the same time as CEO, strategic director. A lot of people have said, well, he's a fantastic multitasker. Actually, no. So what he does is he actually has ultimate focus. He has singularity of focus, and the way he presents that and the way he deals with that is he actually spends 1 day a week in each of his businesses. And when he spends 1 day in that business, he turns everything else off. He won't allow anybody to contact him from any of the other businesses. He goes in, so 1 day I'll be in SpaceX working on a leaking rocket on one of his spaceships, talking to an engineer at that level of detail. The next day he's buying Twitter for £42 billion and setting that up and making huge strategic decisions. And that is how his productivity levels are through the roof. So one of the things that you can take away from this is start building a culture of focus and attention. Attention is going to be the new big buzzword that will help with productivity, and it will help people to manage the interference that pandemic brain is having. But also it will help for people to continue to be successful. So build a culture of attention and focus. Build a culture where people are not distracted. They have a strong plan of exactly what they're going to be working on, and they turn everything else off. Help each other by not interrupting each other or agreeing when you'll be able to interrupt each other, and just work on one thing completely at a time. The brain will, when it's feeling it's overwhelmed, it's got too much information, it can't deal with it, which is what pandemic brain and pandemic fog is creating, also creates a habit which is to distract you, and it will take you away from what you should be working on, and you will move into habits of watching TV too much, any kind of addictive behavior, too much food, working on Twitter and chat, etc., etc. And it's a muscle which we can rebuild, and we need to rebuild that. So there's a link here which we'll send you, which is working on concentration grids, which is a fun game. And that is what I would suggest you get all your people to start playing. It's free. We like that. And you can really build the muscle to focus your attention and get everybody else to focus their attention, and you'll increase your productivity by 59%. So build that muscle. And one of the handouts we're going to be sending you is if you work with me, you'll know this about the power posing and changing your neurobiology with increasing your testosterone, reducing the cortisol. That opens your ability to use your whole brain thinking, and we're sending you a little handout on that as well. So there are a lot of things that we can do. Please take the opportunity to have a chat with me about your personal and your professional circumstances and take away more tools. I hope that's been helpful. I look forward to seeing.
Thanks so much, Rain. You know, it was brilliant to hear how we literally had our brains messed with, but we can take some control back again. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Rick, who has also got some fascinating information about how we have changed.
Hi, thank you very much. So as Liz said earlier on, I'm a business psychologist, and I look at the psychological aspects of what's taking place. So I want to talk to you about our character types, but actually it's about our preferences and what our character preferences are like. So I use a model called Insights when I do this. There's lots of other psychometric models that are out there. I love Insights because it's a really easy to be able to understand. So what we're saying is we all operate from a set of preferences, and it's that mixture of preferences that make us the individuals that we are. We can talk about this by thinking about what our good day traits are and what some of our possible bad day traits are, and then I'll talk to you a bit about what's changed. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the model about what's changed and then what we can do about that as well. So very quickly, if we start talking about this, fiery red on a good day. These are the bold, outspoken people. They're very direct to the point, goal orientated. They know what they want to get. They can't be pushed off course, really action orientated about getting things done. The opposite of fiery red is earth green, and this is people who are much more grounded in the people element of getting things done. Show a lot of empathy because they really care about what it is that they're doing and about the people that are involved in doing that. They like to create kind of really harmonious working environments for people to interact within as well. Sunshine yellow, sociable, dynamic. These are the talkative people. These are the interactive. You know when sunshine yellow's around because they'll generally tell you, won't they, Liz? They're really enthusiastic and they really want to, you know, be part of something. And then the opposite of sunshine yellow is cool blue, who are a bit more formal in nature, a bit more reserved. These are the data gatherers. They want to know information. They want to understand things in a really detailed way. So if you think these are our good day traits, and on a good day, we all operate from a mixture of those traits. So we aren't necessarily one, but we lead with one of those colour energies. So like I lead with fiery red, and then I'm a mixture of yellow coming in behind that into that cool blue with some earth green. So that's what shows up on a good day. But on a bad day, and we talk about a bad day when things aren't going our way, when we've been pushed to be able to get something done, that cool blue energy comes across as maybe being a bit aloof, really. They could be like too formal for people, a bit stuffy and indecisive. Whereas earth green, what normally that nice harmonious pace that they set, becomes quite resistant to things. It's kind of quietly resistant because they process things internally, but they can be quite stubborn and defensive on a bad day. Sunshine yellow, well, you'll know they're having a bad day because they'll tell you they're having a bad day and they'll try and get you to join in with that bad day as well. But it becomes quite indiscreet and a bit flamboyant in nature as well. And then fiery red run the risk of being quite aggressive. Normally liking to be in control, will kind of take control, and which can be quite overbearing and intolerant for others. So if you think we've got these mixes of colour energies, and what's happened is we generally operate from a mixture of those colour energies. What we're recognising in the research that's been done through Insights is that 74% of people have changed their preferences. So if you think, when we think about insights and we can plot in a certain place and you'll have your mixture of those colour energies, 74% of people have changed that mixture coming out of the pandemic. So this is research that was done for 2021, and we're doing the research at the moment to see, well, how's that changing now we're coming further out of the pandemic, and what's happening with people changing there. What this means practically is that we've become a more polarized version of ourselves. So if you think I'm quite a fiery red person, but I've got that really nice mix of the sociability of sunshine yellow, the detail that comes in behind that with the cool blue. And what's happened is, if you think for my mixture of colour energies, I've become a bit more polarized into that fiery red. And when I'm not adaptable and I'm sticking in that fiery red, more of my bad day traits are showing up than my good day traits. Because when we're polarized, we step right into it, and we've not got that adjustment that takes place when we're in there. So Liz and I were talking earlier on about this. As an example, fiery red can do the sociable, do that. Liz, I'm going to out you as sunshine yellow, but I think I already did that. And actually, you know, conversations like pre-pandemic conversations, we adjust our behaviors to each other. So we'll start that conversation and we'll be quite playful in that conversation, and then we'll get down to business, because that's that fiery red side of me, like what's on the agenda, what are we going to get done. So now what could have happened is we've become this polarized version of ourselves where I'm like, we need to get on with business, and then Liz is like, what's happened to Rick? He's not doing all the things. There's something that's gone wrong with them. Not realizing that Liz is only being sunshine yellow and I'm only being fiery red, and we're not adjusting our behaviors to each other. And this takes place in right the way across the gambit. So in the way that you talk to your teams, in the way that your teams talk to each other. And, you know, we're here as talking about sales teams as well. This is definitely taking place in the way that salespeople are interacting and communicating with their customers and their clients on a regular basis. So some of the things that we can do about this, and we can, you know, definitely, if you have that time, if there's any meetings left, to be able to come and have that meeting with me, we can talk about these specific to your team. But relationship curiosity, and up there it says versus expectations. Because we're this more polarized version of ourselves, we have an expectation of what's going to happen, and we've stopped being curious. So we're going in with the expectation and we're stopping there. So when we become more curious in a relationship, we begin to adapt our behaviors again. We go back to that adaptive version of ourselves, and we use more of those colours. Reflecting on the flexibility that you can have within that style. So within your mix of colour energies, if we're a bit more polarised, what we need to do is be able to go, well, actually, how can I dial up and dial down some of the other colour energies so that I'm flexing and I'm becoming more flexible? So the polarised version of ourselves is much more rigid, whereas the flexible side is that adaptive way of interacting, understanding who the other people are to be able to adapt, because it's within ourselves to be able to adapt. Sharing deliberately. This is something that is definitely not happened during the pandemic. People move to remote working, and remote working becomes much more formal in the way that we do things. We've all been on Teams and Zoom calls where we get on, it's straight down to business. I probably enjoyed some of that, but I definitely recognise that I need to be deliberately sharing things about my personality so that I can adapt and I connect and I can be with people, because we need to be able to share our preferences. We're pack animals, and even people who are introverts still need that interaction with other people. And then the last thing to be able to think about on there, and this is some of the bigger picture stuff, is peer coaching networks. Lots of organisations really like to say we're a coaching organisation, or they're striving towards being a coaching organisation. And one of the main reasons that most organisations aren't coaching organisations is because it's recognised that managers coach their team. And that's generally where it stops. And when you introduce a peer coaching network where people work together, they're able to share their vulnerabilities with each other and get that peer coaching from the people they work with in their teams or somebody across the business. And managers are involved in this as well. Like, managers need to have peer coaching networks with each other. That's when we get that real, true coaching element of what takes place. That's like a proper coaching organisation. It's part of the culture, it's ingrained, people can give each other feedback. The biggest thing about this is we're pack animals, we need to interact. So finding as much time as possible to interact with each other. That's what I've got to say.
Thanks, Rick. That's so useful. And I think, you know, what I've taken away from this is how much it has affected us and how much we're seeing everywhere, not just at work, but at home as well. And that we can actually do some quite simple things about it, which is really helpful. And if we can share those things back in the workplace with our colleagues, you know, we can have better conversations, they can have better conversations with their clients, with each other. We can get more productive using some of the hacks that Rain has shared with us, and, you know, and ultimately to feel better, which, as you know, Sunshine Yellow is very important to me, so that people can feel better in the team and that we can have some agency around the kind of environments that we're creating at work. So I'd love to say thank you very much to everybody for attending, and particularly to our fantastic two thought leaders, Rain and Rick, who definitely should have their own show. I will be sending out the replay and the 2 handouts we mentioned, and I'll also remind you about these coaching slots. There's a few left. If you do want to grab one of those, send me your email now in the chat. Otherwise, I'll speak to you later in the week or later next week on the email. So thank you very much, Rick and Rain, and thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening, indeed.
Thanks, guys.